March 15th, 1943. A German technical intelligence report lands on the desk of General Heinz Guderian, the father of Blitzkrieg himself. Inside are photographs and detailed specifications of a captured American weapon, a simple steel tube that would shatter everything the German army thought it knew about armored warfare. The report's conclusion was stark. The enemy now possesses a lightweight, portable anti-tank weapon capable of penetrating 100 millimeters of armor at 150 meters. Immediate countermeasures required. For 3 years, German Panzer divisions had rolled across Europe virtually unopposed by infantry. The sight of approaching tanks sent enemy soldiers fleeing in what the Germans called Panzerschreck, tank terror. But this crude American contraption, hastily welded together and weighing just 13 pounds, was about to turn the hunter into the hunted. The transformation began with a single engagement at Kasserine Pass in February 1943. When Rommel's Afrika Korps overran American positions, they captured intact M1 rocket launchers, along with crates of ammunition. German engineers had seen British anti-tank weapons before: the massive Boys rifle, the unwieldy PIAT mortar, but nothing like this. Colonel Rudolf Gersdorf, Chief Intelligence Officer of Army Group Center, later wrote, "The American weapon represented a quantum leap in portable anti-tank capability. Its simplicity was its genius. Within weeks, the captured bazookas were on ships to Germany. At the Wehrmacht testing facility in Kummersdorf, German engineers stripped down every component. What they found amazed them. Basic electrical components, simple metallurgy, and a design that could be manufactured by any competent metalworking shop. The rocket's shaped charge warhead used the Monroe effect, a principle German scientists understood, but had never applied to portable weapons." The psychological impact hit German tank crews first. Obergefreiter Klaus Weber of the 21st Panzer Division wrote in his diary, "Today, we learn the Americans have a new weapon. Every infantryman can now destroy a tank. We are no longer the kings of the battlefield." Tank commanders, who had grown accustomed to infantry scattering at their approach, now faced a terrifying reality. Every doorway, every hedgerow, every pile of rubble could hide death in the form of an $8 rocket. German doctrine had to evolve rapidly. Pre-1943 tank tactics emphasized speed and independent action. Panzer units would punch through enemy lines, leaving infantry to mop up resistance. But bazookas changed everything. New directives, issued in April 1943, mandated that tanks never operate without infantry support in built-up areas. Commanders were ordered to engage suspected bazooka positions from maximum range and to avoid close-quarters combat whenever possible. The first major doctrinal shift came during the planning for Operation Citadel, the massive tank offensive at Kursk. General Model's 9th Army incorporated new tactics specifically designed to counter bazookas. Panzer formations would advance in a wedge, with infantry closely following to clear buildings and strong points. Artillery barrages would precede any movement into potentially defended areas. Tank crews received new training, emphasizing situational awareness and the identification of anti-tank teams. But doctrine was only half the solution. German engineers worked frantically to develop their own rocket launcher. The Raketenpanzerbüchse 43, or Panzerschreck, entered production in September 1943. Using the bazooka's basic design, but scaling up to 88 millimeters, it could penetrate 160 millimeters of armor. The irony wasn't lost on German commanders. They were copying American simplicity, while their own Tiger tanks grew ever more complex and expensive. hardware modifications became desperate improvisations. Tank crews began welding spare track links to their hulls, creating makeshift armor called schürzen, or skirts. Sandbags were strapped to turrets and hulls. Some crews even mixed concrete with spare parts, creating crude but effective additional protection. These field modifications added weight and reduced mobility, but they offered psychological comfort to crews who now felt vulnerable to ordinary infantry. The real revolution came in urban warfare tactics. Before 1943, German tanks would charge directly down streets, using their armor and firepower to overwhelm resistance. Stalingrad had shown the dangers of urban fighting, but bazookas made city combat nearly suicidal for armor. New protocols emerged. Tanks would stand off at least 200 meters from buildings, using high explosive shells to collapse suspected firing positions. Infantry would clear structures room by room before armor advanced. Sicily in July 1943 became the testing ground for these new tactics. German commanders deployed their tanks with unprecedented caution. Oberst Bergengruen of the Hermann Göring Division reported, "Our advance has slowed to a crawl. Every building must be treated as a potential threat. Tank infantry cooperation has become not just advisable, but mandatory for survival." The impact was measurable. German tank losses to infantry weapons jumped from less than 5% in 1942 to over 20% by late 1943. More significantly, tank crews began reporting mechanical failures and abandonments at unprecedented rates. Post-war analysis revealed that many of these breakdowns occurred when bazooka teams were spotted nearby, a clear sign that psychological pressure was breaking veteran crews. Normandy marked the full evolution of German anti-bazooka tactics. Rommel's Atlantic Wall incorporated new defensive principles. Tanks positioned in hull-down positions, extensive use of anti-personnel obstacles to keep bazooka teams at range, and pre-planned artillery fires on likely infantry approach routes. The famous 21st Panzer Division redesigned their standard operating procedures entirely around the bazooka threat. Yet adaptation came at a terrible cost. The very speed and aggression that made Blitzkrieg effective were being sacrificed for survival. Tank formations that once covered 30 miles per day now struggled to advance 3 miles when facing determined infantry. The Wehrmacht's greatest tactical innovation, combined arms warfare emphasizing rapid movement, was being neutered by a weapon that cost less than a tank's radio. German industry tried to keep pace with increasingly complex armor schemes. The Panzer IV received additional frontal armor. The Panzer V Panther incorporated sloped armor designed to deflect shaped charge warheads. The massive Tiger II boasted frontal armor so thick that even improved American rockets struggled to penetrate. But each enhancement added weight, complexity, and cost, while reducing the very mobility that made tanks effective. By 1944, German tank doctrine had been completely transformed. The new manual, Tactics Against Infantry Anti-Tank Weapons, ran to 200 pages, compared to just 30 pages devoted to the subject in 1942. Tank crews received extensive training in spotting bazooka teams, coordinating with infantry, and fighting in restrictive terrain. The freewheeling tank commanders of 1940 had been replaced by cautious tacticians who treated every engagement as a potential trap. The Battle of the Bulge demonstrated both the success and failure of German adaptation. Panzer units advanced with unprecedented caution, using artillery and infantry to clear suspected positions. When they encountered bazooka teams, they had learned to withdraw and call for support rather than charging forward. This tactical discipline saved individual tanks, but robbed the offensive of its essential speed, What should have been a lightning advance became a grinding slog that ultimately failed. The transformation was complete by war's end. German armor doctrine had evolved from aggressive independence to defensive cooperation. Tanks that once hunted prey now moved like hunted animals, cautious, paranoid, and dependent on infantry protection. The Panzerwaffe that terrorized Poland and France in 1940 bore little resemblance to the careful, methodical force of 1945. Post-war interviews with German commanders revealed the true extent of the change. General Balk admitted, "The American rocket launcher forced us to abandon everything we had learned about tank warfare. We became prisoners of our own caution." Colonel von Mellenthin wrote, "By 1944, our tank crews were more afraid of enemy infantry than enemy tanks." The psychological advantage had completely reversed. The bazooka's greatest victory wasn't measured in tanks destroyed, but in tactics abandoned. It forced the most innovative armored force in military history to abandon its core principles. Speed gave way to caution, aggression to methodical advance, and independent action to rigid cooperation with supporting arms. In the end, a simple steel tube had accomplished what no Allied tank could. It made the German Panzer afraid. The revolution was permanent. Modern tank doctrine still bears the scars of those desperate adaptations made under the pressure of cheap, portable rockets. Every army learned the lesson Germany paid for in blood. Armor without infantry support is merely expensive target practice. The age of the independent tank charge died not with a bang, but with the whistle of an $8 rocket fired from a coat hanger sight.